now that he is properly hydrated, hanging out with us from Colony Square. What is up, my friend?
Not too much, man. A nice, fun week that hopefully we can move quickly on from the weekend because a little fella. I guess I'm actually accidentally wearing a little like Inter Miami colors. That's just on accident.
Should you have alluded to that on the air?
Why not?
Okay.
Let every shirt.
I know, and that's the thing. Is it is
think about it.
It is just a shirt, sir. There is I believe that there is no immediate bearing to the team that is coming here in the midweek, Messi and Friends, and Messi got to play on the weekend. But I know that going into the match, that obviously you're looking at a team in Nashville that hadn't been scoring goals, has been a team in transition under B.J. Callahan, and they get the jump on Atlanta United early on, only a handful of minutes in, and so then you're fighting uphill from that moment. Rob Valentino after the match, and I do have some sound that I'll probably end up playing somewhere here in the show. Rob Valentino said it was unacceptable, and you've got a team that was off for 2 weeks, and they come out just flat, and it showed.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell from Rob Valentino's post game that this performance completely caught him off guard, and I think sometimes in training you might be able to get the feeling that it doesn't feel like these guys are going to bring it on the weekend, and it sounded from his comments that he didn't have any knowledge of that. He didn't get that feeling at all. He expected a better performance. And look, you would always expect a better performance, but I think sometimes you can kind of see it coming. This one certainly blindsided him. And you could tell by the way he was reacting in the post-game discussion that he was incredibly frustrated, kind of alluded to maybe not having an answer in regards to the performance. Promised it wouldn't happen again, but kind of walked back that promise because, if you feel like everything's trending in the right way, and then they show up on Saturday night at home to a winnable game, and then do throw that performance out there, why would you be able to confirm that it'll never look like that again? And this was one that it sounded without putting anyone's name directly out there, he wanted to put directly on the players. And to an extent he did without doing it directly. And that's a cause for concern in regards to the playoff chase. I mean, this was probably your best case scenario for 3 points, right? You're fully rested. You're at home. This is the worst team in the Eastern Conference, at least at that time, according to the table. Nashville was. Everything was working in your favor, and then you throw out a performance that is essentially wholly non-competitive. And from the start, too. I mean, you give up a goal in the 5th minute, and it's pretty much over from there. You didn't rebound, right? You didn't respond to that goal. And that's the thing we at least have seen in some instances where Atlanta United has gone down early. I think we have sometimes seen a response. We just didn't get that today, or excuse me, on Saturday. And quite frankly, all the hopes of Alexei Miranchuk being an impactful player, and I'm not going to say that he's not. It's a one-game sample size, right? We're not calling for the heads of Raheem Morris. We're not going to call for the head of Alexei Miranchuk right now. But it was a very disappointing home debut for Miranchuk because in L.A., against the Galaxy, when he was on the road, he made his first career start for Atlanta United. It did not lead directly to a goal, but I thought you saw how dangerous he could be and the vision that he's working with and some of the things. And I do want to make this point because a lot of people are talking about, he had all these trainings and the chemistry with the teammates is going to be so much better than it was with the squad out in LA. Just remember, it's not just about learning his teammates. It's also about learning this league and learning the opponents. And you have to go through it and see how each team defends different aspects of what you're trying to do. And so the learning curve may be a little bit steeper for Miranchuk than we maybe want to give credit to or maybe initially thought, because he's a different style of player than a guy like Almada. It doesn't just come in the realm of take over because I can beat this man one-on-one. It manifests itself differently. But it was a disappointing home debut for Alexei Miranchuk. Hopefully he can be a little bit more impactful in the midweek game. But now you've got some real issues because Ronald Hernandez is potentially dealing with an ankle injury he picked up in training. Pedro Amador got crushed and might be sent into concussion protocol, or who knows if he's going to be ready. And so you are short-staffed a little bit on that back end now, which anytime you're going against Miami, probably not the place you'd want to be a little bit short-staffed. But the moral of the story here, John, is it's incredibly frustrating to see this performance because you had the potential of making a move in the standings on the table. And if it was going to happen, it felt like it was going to happen in this game. It didn't. There's still some time. Not a lot of it, but there's still some time. But now you've got to find a couple of wins, and at least one of them's probably going to have to come on the road. One of them's probably going to have to come against teams that are higher than you in the table. And so you've got to find your way up another spot in the standings, and it would have been a lot easier to do that with 3 points against Nashville.
Yeah, the numbers on Alexei Miranchuk, according to our friends at SofaScore, he punched a 6.9, 49 touches in 90 minutes, 31 of 37 passing at 84%, had the one cross, had 2 long balls that were successful, 1 shot on target and 1 off, was 2 for 2 on his duels, fouled once, had a clearance, and had a tackle on the day. So that's what you're staring at from Alexei Miranchuk. You mentioned the possible injuries. Obviously, Shonday's dealing with something that he's been dealing with for quite some time with the foot. I'm still trying to figure out, since you mentioned Pedro Amador, how Sam Surridge did not get a card of any color when he cleared Amador out. When you look at the replay and you see Surridge climb the ladder and take his, and I know it was his right, but I'm left-handed, where he takes his forearm and basically cleans Amador out on the climb up, and Amador ends up landing face first on the turf because of getting cleaned out by Surridge. No card, no foul, no nothing. And Pedro Amador was down for quite some time. And obviously they had to treat a head injury, and you end up with a concussion sub, I believe, at the time as he was getting checked out. So, this was the opportunity, I think, capital T, capital O, when it came to trying to get north of the playoff bar, and you would have been within touching distance of possibly even the 7, depending on what Orlando would have done. But right now, as you say, it is still outside looking in. It is 8 wins on the board, and DC is 2 points ahead of you. But once again, you're getting chased by the neighbor's dog if you're the postman, because you got all the neighbor's dogs that are chasing after you when you hit the neighborhood, because Atlanta's at 31. Philadelphia's at 30, identical record to Montreal, well ahead of Montreal. And this is what may just absolutely wipe Montreal off the map with any kind of consideration. A goal difference of minus 22. And Atlanta's got that coming to town in the next month. But Montreal at 30 points and 7 wins. Chicago, 7 wins and 29 points. And they are 1 goal ahead of Nashville in goal difference. And then really New England is still not, out of it completely and totally, but they've got 27 points in 27 matches. So dogs are barking behind you. You're trying to take care of business with 6 to go, and you're trying to be 2 points better than DC to hop into the playoff picture. That's what you're staring at right now.
Well, the good news about that and what's right behind you is that you play both of those teams. You play Philadelphia, you play Montreal, and quite frankly, and we came close to calling Nashville a must-win. I think those 2 are must-win. I mean, you're just not going to hold them off if they take the points from you. And it's an opportunity against teams that are theoretically worse than you, at least based on the current standings, to take all 3, including one of those being at home, that game against Montreal. So those become integral. And then you got to find a way to either beat Miami, Red Bulls, either here or there, Orlando City, in the final game of the season. And so there's still opportunity. I mean, there's still 3, maybe 4 wins potentially out there, but you just cannot look the way you did on Saturday night. Lifeless and listless. You weren't up for the game from the start, and that's the biggest issue. And I would imagine Wednesday with Miami and the top team in the Eastern Conference, you'll be up for it, and you'll have a little bit better performance. I would think whether or not Messi comes and plays, the crowd, who had bought tickets hoping he would be, will be there in full force and hopefully can energize the squad. But it's still there. That's what's kind of crazy is you got another weekend of results that really didn't kill you in terms of what's ahead of you. And it's there. I mean, you've got the games that you need right there. You've also got a game in hand on some of the teams that are directly above you in that 8 and 9 spot. So you're going to have to put use of that game in hand and deal with it on that front. But it's concerning because let's go back beyond just Nashville, right? You go back to that Charlotte game and you put in a pretty strong effort over the course of 90 minutes in Charlotte, and you feel like you're trending up. You feel like you've got something going there, and then you come back home after rest and recovery and a game plan and kind of gearing up for this final 7-game push, now 6 games. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't there. And now the flip side is you've also seen Charlotte, and they had another poor performance this weekend. And you start to ask yourself, how much of that was even Atlanta trending upwards, or is it just a massive downward turn for Charlotte? And I think you can make your arguments for the downward turn from Charlotte, and then you combine that with what we saw from Atlanta United, it does give you some concern. But you've got to find a way to pick up some points in games that maybe you don't expect to, and that includes Wednesday against Miami. I mean, at this point, you'll take anything, even a draw at home would be huge based on the rest of the schedule. And again, it makes that Philly and that Montreal game. I mean, those are unless you plan on beating Red Bulls twice and taking it to Miami on Wednesday, like those 2 games are just absolutely must wins. Like we're not going to make. We're not going to kind of gloss over it as, the season's not over if you don't win. No, like those are must-win games. Like if you're going to jump into that spot, those are must-win games. But the performance is certainly concerning. And back to how we opened the discussion, like Rob Valentino is not going to have very much patience in this one.
The dude dropped an F-bomb.
Well,
in the post-game press conference. I don't know how well that went over on
we try not to bring too much attention to that because it was aired live on the air. But the frustration was very clear. I mean, he blew off Jarrett for what was supposed to be a post-game discussion down on the field. I would also blow off Jarrett if we're going to be honest.
Yeah, he was that hot. Yeah,
I blow him off as much as possible in the press box. I certainly would blow him off in the field. But no, I mean, look, he was working his way through it, incredibly frustrated, trying to gather his thoughts. And something tells me it's not going to be a fun week or half week of sessions leading up to this game on Wednesday. And all I can say is, and we talked about this, Mike Connie was the one that pointed out really in the full-time report, if there's anything you're holding on to, the one thing that because I said the one that Atlanta United just hasn't found consistency. They've never really stretched out their legs and hit a rhythm. And Mike Conti said, actually, they have found consistency in one thing, and that is playing to the level of their opponent, whether it be up or, unfortunately, whether it be down. Yeah. And we've seen them compete with some of the best teams in the MLS. We've also seen them drop points to some of the worst teams in the MLS. And so if there is like a big glimmer of hope, it's like maybe once again they can rise to the level of competition and play on even terms with Miami or potentially find a winner. And so that's kind of what I'm holding on to at this point, because there's nothing from the performance on Saturday that leads me to believe that they're going to be able to beat Miami on Wednesday. But again, it just hasn't seemed like one performance to the next. You've been able to carry over momentum, and that includes momentum that's gone backwards. Like it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have a stinker on Wednesday. They might, but just because they didn't look good Saturday does not, over the course of this season, has not meant that they're not going to bring it on Wednesday. And so hope springs eternal, optimism remains, and we'll see what they've got for the little guy if he's brave enough to step out onto the pitch.
Well, let's see. Abe Gordon, 92.9 the game. At Abe Gordon at 929 the game on the 280 character app. I was looking at the minutes played from the individuals. Our resident Philadelphia Union fan, Rich Ransom, is in the timeline this morning. And he mentions that with Messi and Friends getting the Duke, Messi played 90 minutes. Luis Suarez played 90 minutes. Diego Gomez, who's heading to Brighton at some point, played 81 minutes. Redondo in the midfield played 89 minutes. So you're getting a lot of folks that logged a lot of minutes. Busquets played 90. Julian Gressel, as I'm scanning, he also played 81 minutes. So your front seven that you're used to seeing, and the Gulfstream Galacticos, Jordi Alba played 90 minutes. They all went the distance, or most of it, getting ready for this particular matchup that we have here in the midweek. So the Palace intrigue does exist as to how many minutes, if any, those individuals will play in the midweek going up against Atlanta United.
Yeah, the thing that's been kind of crazy about Miami is it doesn't seem to matter who's in there. Yep. Like they have produced, and obviously Messi returned this past week. Look who's joining. Messi returned this past week. Now, he obviously didn't have to knock the rust off. It didn't take long. 2 goals and an assist for him. But even without him, in the time that he's missed in injury, like they've just been cruising along. They've already clinched a playoff spot. They're still cruising along, and it just hasn't seemed to matter. That's what's honestly been most impressive is everyone who when Messi came to the MLS, everyone was like, all right, we know he's not going to play 45 games a season or whatever the number may be.
Sure.
How many points do they drop in the games that he's not playing? It has not been much. They are just cruising along. I mean, what was it? A 3-1 victory, I think, over this past weekend. They're still scoring goals without him, and it's not just him. Jordi Alba and Suarez and Busquets, like they're still doing damage even when he's not the maestro on the field there. So it's really, really impressive to see what they've been able to do without Messi, and then, quite frankly, a little bit scary to see what they can do with him. But again, this is a Atlanta United squad that has already dealt with them one time this season and come out victorious in one of the more surprising results in the moment. And so, look, hopefully they can rise to that occasion and do it again on Wednesday.
Jared, I will give you the last question for Abe Gordon and his weekly Monday visit, except when the Falcons come to town.
Oh God. Without knowing what you guys have discussed already.
That's good.
Yeah, I know. That's always the best. Hey, Abe, the disappointment notwithstanding from Saturday night, Rob Valentino's words, clearly doing a lot of the lifting.
Oh, yeah, bro.
What change? You look at it, what changes would you make going into Wednesday night? And would any of them be, hey, for me personally, it is I need people who are willing to fight. And I didn't always get that sense Saturday night. So any changes you're making for Wednesday?
Well, there's a couple things. With the limitations, I expect limitations on Hernandez and Amador, potentially, I would say likely out. I would go back to the whether you want to call it 3 center backs or 5 in the back, whatever you did. This is what you did the first time in Miami. Maybe not by choice now, but by personnel. I think you have to go back to that and insert Noah Cobb back into the lineup and Brooks Lennon. And I don't know what you do on the left side right now, if we're going to be honest. But I thought he was maybe banged up. I thought he maybe had some limitations too. So we'll see what's going on there. Again, I know in theory you could have maybe pulled Mosquera back there, but if Xande Silva's limited, I mean it's a mess. It's kind of maybe Tyler Wolf goes up top and Mosquera, however you're going to do it. But I would probably go back to 3 center backs in this one. I think the question's fair. Who is going to lay it on the line? And I just don't know who you have in the reserves that I would make a change for. I think maybe you can ask more of guys that are going to be out there, but I mean, quite frankly, you're in the midst of a final 6-game playoff push. It's a little late to be making like desperation moves because of mindset of players. And I think it's a fair question, by the way, Jarrett. Like, guys, we're not fighting. And I think the biggest like instance of that was, as we mentioned here, John, when Pedro Amador got clocked, and it was like no one's running to his defense except for Goose.
Brother, I was hot.
Well, you weren't on the field though, Jarrett. Like,
yes,
you're not taking care of business.
Actually, he was.
Actually, I was on the field.
Yeah, you were, but you somehow didn't make it in between the lines there. I don't think you were going to go. I mean, look, I've seen you play. Maybe you were going to go double-footed slide studs up into surge.
Wow. If I went in to double foot somebody, I'm going to blow up both ACLs in the process.
Well, maybe you nick him at least in part of that. So, no, but I mean, all joking aside, like it was like, dude, is no one going to crack him the next time there's a ball in the air or whatever? And it just didn't happen. And no one was really even overly animated except for Goose, who was incredibly frustrated and had the right to do so. And so I do think what you're asking is fair, but it's just like, I don't know right now if they have the moves to make. I mean, you've but you've had so many guys exit the club. I think your depth is really being tested, even more so by the injuries. And so, I mean, what about you, a guy that you're looking for that you would wish I had singled out here, Jarrett, that was like, I can't believe you didn't bring up so-and-so, because I just don't know, maybe you bring Moyamba back into the starting lineup, but like, I don't think starting Dax McCarty is going to have some sort of dramatic change. I'd like to see Jay Fortune stay in there. I think he's performed well. You're not going to bench Moranchuk. So it's just like, what are the changes to be had?
No, it's a tricky, I agree. It's a tricky question. I ask you genuinely, because I think it is very tricky that you can't just empty everybody out. And this isn't FIFA. We talk about this isn't a video game where you can just throw guys in there and it works. I think for me personally, I think Rob's in a really tricky spot because, look, Rob is going to be considered for this job full time. Now, whether or not you think he should get it, notwithstanding, they're gonna treat him like a real candidate. And I've said this before, but they're going to talk about him like a real candidate because he deserves that respect. He's been a steward of the club for years. He's been through multiple staffs. He has stepped up when you've needed him to be the interim. He slid back into Gonzo's staff. He stepped up in a really tough time again. You treat him with respect. You're going to interview him. You're going to show him that respect. You're not going to dismiss him. But whether or not he's coaching here next year or whether he's coaching somewhere else, this is a long-ass audition for him for his career. If he wants to be a head guy, maybe not at MLS right now, but somewhere else. And I think you want to trust the veteran guys who can get a job done. It's easy for me to say, play the kids. It's a really easy thing for me to say that because I'm not the one with my job on the line and my future on the line. Because instinctively, it's, hey, put the kids out there, man. Let Luke Brennan go out there and try and start a fight again, like he did last time he played. But it's so much easier for me to say that sitting here than a guy who is trying to trust a team around him, not only to win games, but also, again, he's auditioning for his future. So, I mean, I don't know what changes you would make. You're going to have to probably make some because I would imagine Amador's there's no way he wasn't concussed to oblivion and back. You had Stian took a knock. Derek took a knock. Shande was banged up and had to come off. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to get really creative how you put this together Wednesday night. I don't know what changes you would make just for the sake of, fire and brimstone, but we were standing on the field waiting post game, and the hit on Amador, I was the same way. Like Brad went to the referee, which is the captain. Good move. I mean, that's the rugby move for the captain to go to the ref. But I was disappointed that I'm not saying somebody needs to go get sent off, but I'm disappointed that no one went up there and put Surridge back on the ground.
Yep.
You don't have to punch him. You don't have to cheap shot him. You needed someone in that moment. The game's over. It's done. You're not doing anything. And then you have the team that's beating your ass 2-0 in your house in a rivalry match, laying a cheap shot on your left back, and you don't do shit? Mm-mm. No. Somebody needs to go. You know, like I said, you don't have to cheap shot him. You don't have to Bertuzzi him. I'm not saying that.
No.
But somebody go up there and put a shoulder in his ass, put him on the ground and stand over him and create a mass confrontation. Because you can't let somebody disrespect you or your team or your badge like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I am.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of things in regards to the Rob Valentino job audition, stuff like that. I actually think that it would be wise to not make a lot of changes. I don't think you can show emotion as a manager, and you're incredibly frustrated at the performance. It feels like it would be an emotional decision, maybe not a well thought out analytic decision. If you just make a bunch of changes because you're not happy with the way guys played on Saturday. And as we talked about previously too, for whatever reason, how guys play or perform and either individually or as a team, one game to the next just doesn't seem to carry over. And you just don't know who is or isn't going to have it on a given night. And so I think trying to make and approach the roster, the lineup, the starting 11, the reserves from a more level-headed mindset versus the emotions of what we saw Saturday is probably the only way to go for Rob Valentino. I mean, you're no longer in a timeline, and this is why I like the Luke Brendan discussion to me is a non-starter. And I like Luke Brennan. It's got nothing to do with him. But you're not in a timeline where you can send a message to the team. You're in a timeline where you have to find a way to get points. And if you truly thought that he was the way and best method to get points, then by all means, after thinking about it and considering it and calming down from Saturday, if you still think that's the best way to get points, then yes, make that change. But if you think it's sending a message to some of the other guys, some of the more veteran guys or whatever you want it to be, you just don't have the time to do that. You don't have a game to throw away, certainly not one at home. And so you've kind of got to gauge what you're doing with your subs. Is it a message to guys or is it the best way to get points? I think right now the best way to get points is still to go with the guys that, for better or worse, have gotten you where you are. Still fighting for a playoff spot, although I guess like everyone in the Eastern Conference is kind of still fighting for a playoff spot.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think you do have to approach it a little bit more analytically and a little bit less emotionally. And so that's why you might see a new formation, as we mentioned, maybe 5 in the back and 3 center backs, stuff like that to cover up some things. But in terms of like mass changes or like a hockey substitute, I just don't see that happening because you don't have the time or the points to play around with it anymore.
I know we kept you way past the fourth official holding up the light board, my friend.
They gave 9 minutes. They gave 9 minutes on Saturday. We get 10 here. What's the difference?
Okay, just checking. I didn't want you to get in any kind of trouble down there at Colony Square, you know, as you're getting ready for your day and trying to stay properly hydrated. What's the plan between now and Wednesday?
Just gear up, man. I mean, we're really excited for Wednesday. I don't know if the little man, Lionel Messi, is going to be playing or not. But the potential of him playing has got me very excited. I've obviously never seen him play live in person. I've watched plenty of it, but very excited for that. And so we're going to bring it on Wednesday at 6:30 with the Five Stripes Countdown. We're certainly going to bring it, hopefully with some good news after with the full-time report. And really just looking forward to getting to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, just seeing how juiced up the fans are on Wednesday. Mike and Jason, I imagine they're going to be juiced up as well. And then hopefully it's not just a total letdown either by performance of Atlanta or by Lionel Messi not stepping onto the field at all. I'd like to see him get out there at least for a little bit, maybe if it's even as a sub, but really excited about the potential of Wednesday. So we're just going to build towards it, and hopefully that'll help us move on from what potentially could happen tonight with the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, and like I said, Rich Ransom, our resident Philadelphia, and he's like, yep, saw Messi and Friends knock off his union, but now he's going to be watching the Eagles and the Falcons. Thanks as always, my friend, for staying a little extra this morning. And we will catch up with you. We will see you Wednesday. We'll hear you Wednesday, and we'll catch up with you soon. Yep, sounds good. Appreciate you having me. We'll see you guys next week. Always. That's Abe.